thing. It's a real privilege to be here. Baie dankie vir almal. And I think I'm the last act, and then we're going to have lunch and leave and disperse. So thanks. It's been an incredible learning experience, every single thing, because I'm not a farmer, right? So thank you very much. And I must say, the striking analogies between the human body and the cow and the sheep is just incredible. You know, when I was a first year medical student, ek gaan nou oppraat met die, het ek onthou ek het ons het begin deur 'n haas te dissekteer. Dit was daar in biologie 1 en it lyk my net 'n mens. So yeah, no, we've got a lot of striking analogies. You know, I often my brother he's retired now. He's a theology guy. He always said, "Don't think we're that separate, that much different from animals." And so we're not that much better than animals. And at the same time, animals are, from the other benchmark perspective, way closer to us than we think. And so it's a beautiful analogy, the closeness of biology and the symbiosis that's so important. So my work is a lot around systems and the way complex living systems operate together and the synergy that comes from that. So the first talk was fantastic, just the way the feet on the soil and the way everything connects. Thank you so much, Colin, and the whole family. It was just wonderful to spend some time with you guys on that. And also, Che, man, what a great biology, what a great biochemistry session. Yeah. Just, you made it so simple, you know, and really, yes, I'm missing the foofy slides, I must say. It was, we didn't need the tree reacts to get ourselves completely stuffed up. Eh? you just either burn your hands or you fall in the middle. So many ways you can crash and burn. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be fairly quick, but this session is all about you. All right, if I say guys, it's guys and girls. So that's the way we do it nowadays, right? We roll. So you guys, it's all about you. I have the privilege to study the field, the brain, that is the most fascinating thing. So you've got to stuff up pretty badly to actually stuff up a session like this, because it's all about you and me, and that's our wonderful brains, and how we actually, rock up at the party of life. My job is to actually lead the process of you and me into what we call yield, efficiency. Now, everything you set up, I mean, you are all farmers, or very close to farming. You understand the difference between output and yield, right? I often have to train the corporates and the executives on this, because for them it's all about output. They need output. You need output, productivity. But what we really need when you think of a living system is yield, right? You want yield. Yield is output over time, sustained. That's what, and that essentially says there's growth and there's succession and there's a whole process. We ride the rhythm of life in that sense, the rhythm of nature. And that is what efficiency really gives us. So if you think about you and me, and you think about high performance, you've got to think yield. If you don't, you have high output and burnout. Burnout is effectively the route to death, the end of the biological system. So it is that important. And that's the stuff that I keep myself busy with over the past 15 years, after having spent a lot of time seeing patients. The way I came to stand here today and not working in the hospital was actually I started seeing more and more patients who had the symptoms of a weak leg and a weak arm. So my world is neurology, right? So it's julle moet my nooit kom sien nie. Neurology is all the bad stuff that happens when your nervous system is backed up in some way or another. And they come with a weak arm, and a weak leg, or some loss of consciousness, or pins and needles in a hand or a foot, and they think there's a tumor growing in my brain. Daar's 'n abscess of daar's hier's 'n stroke op pad. And those patients that I saw all shared a number of other things too. But what they did effectively is they had no problem in their brain that you could see. So I did a scan. We called it a therapeutic scan because they feel better when you do the scan, and then it's like a car. You take the car to the mechanic and it's all fine. They felt better because they relaxed. What were they doing? They were breathing too fast. They didn't know it. They were hyperventilating without actually knowing it. And breathing too fast, paradoxically, gives you more oxygen, but paradoxically what you do is you also exhale a lot of carbon dioxide, right? And carbon dioxide is about 20 times as soluble through the lungs than oxygen. And so you basically go what we call hypocarbic. And because of that, they become dizzy and they have all these things. Why? Because when carbon dioxide goes down, the hemoglobin that binds the oxygen holds on too strongly to the oxygen. So it gee nie suurstof af aan die systeem nie. And the part of your body that is the most sensitive for oxygen is what? The brain. Split second without oxygen and we call it syncope, you fall down, you lose your consciousness. So the brain starts to protest and says, where's my oxygen? Because you're breathing too fast, you now have less oxygen, and then you have symptoms. And those symptoms then were these fleeting symptoms that they thought were actually tumors in their brains. So we did the scan therapeutically, they started to breathe a bit low. Symptoms go away. I gave them a tablet to prove that this is really the problem. So what's that, a bit of a tranquilizer? I said, go home and use this, come back in 2 weeks if you're fine. And they all did. They came back. Why? Because they were also actually extremely disciplined people. They were hardworking. They were extremely successful. That's the other part of the common denominator. They were leaders, business leaders, successful, very successful in what they were doing. But they had these symptoms. They were breathing so fast. Why? Because they couldn't really keep up with what they were doing. So with all their discipline and their hard work, they were actually working themselves into burnout, into demise. We did some work on these individuals and looked at their inflammatory system. They had inflammation. Those the oxygen radicals and things started to build up in their systems. And they were effectively dying. It's just a very slow death. They were going to die 10, 20, 30 years sooner than they were supposed to die, because this was what was starting to happen. And why did they develop this hyperventilation? They couldn't keep up. It's because they developed something called chronic stress. So chronic stress is a killer. It's an absolute killer of the biological system. And that's the flip side of the coin when things start to go wrong. You heard a lot of things here, I think, in this story. Well, I'm going to unpack it a bit, okay, when we go into the slides. I'm going to unpack that. I'm just telling you why I'm here, right? So I was seeing these patients, and they became so fascinating to me. And I said, hey, man, we've got to get you out of this inflammatory state. And so I started to treat them with, no worries, thank you. Pin me down. Chronic inflammatory state, get them out of that. Get them back into a state of well-being. So as we started working with programs, mindfulness and all kinds of weird stuff. I mean, can you imagine a neurologist sitting in Panorama Medical Clinic and telling people how to meditate? Figuring out how can we actually get the breathing back, you know? And from this, a whole host of things started to develop, which is today what we call the resilience programs and high-performance programs that we use at Neurozone, where I'm working. So these patients went away, and they started working on this. So once again, they're diligent, disciplined. And they came back with incredible results. They didn't only reverse all the inflammation and the stuff in their bodies, hulle was gesonder, but they also reported clarity of mind. I have more time to make decisions. I have better relationships at home and at work. So they were actually spiraling from a state of inflammation, which eventually leads to death through your chronic illnesses that you develop, to high performance. They were thriving. They were just starting to have fun and enjoy life. I hope the fun part, that's a really important degree. So they had fun. They were in a thriving state. and they could start to cope better. Now, all of you know what I'm talking about when you think chronic stress. You just don't think chronic stress, but you do know when you go into that state where your sleep goes down. I'm getting more irritable. Snapshot decisions. Ek begin mense se koppe afbyt. All kinds of things that's starting to go down because I'm just not actually coping well anymore. So life is a dynamic roller coaster. The question is, how can we actually, in that roller coaster, be above the line of dysfunction so that you guys don't develop your illnesses that you are going to develop when you're 90 or 110, maybe nowadays, at the young age of 60 or 50 or 40. Okay, and that's why I'm here. So those patients became clients. So I'm going to share with you how your brain-body system actually works to prevent that stress, and to be a high performer, and at the top of it, actually be extremely efficient. That's all in 40 minutes, so that's going to be a roller coaster ride. Asseblief, as jy enige vrae het, hou dit vir die einde, maar vra dit in Afrikaans of in your or English, whatever works for you. I'm happy to deal with that. Okay, happy. So there it is. You and I, the human performance continuum doesn't actually start at that level of high performance at the top. There's a whole continuum, and you and I are actually spiraling along this line all the time. I worked a lot underneath the line, very much here. This is neurology. Nee. And that's where we are now. Maar ons almal hardloop hierso. We all run in this spiral continuously. The question is, where do you think you are at the moment? Don't answer. All right. This is what life is all about, because things are out to get us, believe it or not. You work in a hospital. You know this. I mean, farmers know this, right? By the way, I just have to say one thing. I'm not that far away from a farm than I look. Both my grandparents grew up on farms, 2 of the 4, actually 3 of the 4. And interesting enough, we talked about milk. You know Fair Cape, the dairy guys in the Western Cape, those 5 brothers, they are my cousins. My grandmother grew up on the farm where that Fair Cape originated. So I was just it was just my grandmother. They had the grandfather, you see. So I missed the boat of being a dairy guy by I would think by a gender sliver. But nevertheless, so we're very close to that, right? We are deeply close to farming as South Africans. And so the biology, you guys know how this biology works. Life is not out to get you. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I have to say, if you don't understand that, you must come, or if you actually are too optimistic about that biology, we don't understand biology. Because life is not out to get you, but death is definitely out there to get you. So there's a lot of things that's continuously challenging our systems. We stay alive in the face of what can actually take our lives. And that's a very natural, normal process. In fact, you have to understand and deeply embody that to understand resilience and growth. We talked about the stress. Stress needs to, there's stress is necessary for life. Ons moet actually stress hê. Die biologie werk so. Because stress builds the bones. I think that's what you said, Alex. Stress builds the bones. Stress develops us to be the best performers that we can be. At the same time, if you don't get it right, you can demise. So that's why there's this spiral, right? When you think about the idea of efficiency and high performance, and you think about the brain, ek gaan by die brein kom. I want you to just think about this. That is just a cell, right? And we have trillions of cells, as you know. Those cells, this is life. Life at its most rudimentary form. Why is this important? Because life only exists in an external environment if it can create an internal environment with order. Orderly structures. and orderly processes that can repeat and give the yield we're looking for. That means that there's got to be something that creates a border between what is outside and what is inside. In a cell, that's the cell wall, the membrane. It is not a wall as such, because it is semi-permeable. The proteins that Alex showed sit in those walls, in the membrane, and ensure that there's traffic, there's information, there's flow of information, but it is selective. Why? Because what happens inside of that cell has to be very orderly and repetitive. And it has to be able to continuously do this in the presence of a continuously changing external environment. So the external environment is changing all the time. Here's how it works, right? Just think about it. There are events, continuously events. There's a storm coming. There's something happening. All kinds of things. Earthquakes. All kinds of things happening in the external environment. That is the big events, and that happens continuously. Every time it subsides, what happens? Everything changes from where it was now to its state of the lowest energy. That's called entropy. Right? So entropy is chaos. It's not true. Entropy is how chaos goes back to the lowest energy state, but it changes, it changes, it changes, it changes. Boom, another thing happens. Boom, 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 boom. That's what happens all the time in the world. And it is speeding up due to our own doing, of course, with all this technology. So now we've got an external environment that is rapidly, rapidly changing. And how do you stay stable internally? Stable enough so you can have all your orderly activities work well. It's through a number of adaptations. That's what we call intelligence. It's by being able to predict what's going to happen in the future. How can I adapt to that condition and circumstances using all my knowledge, my expertise, and everything I have, and then I'm going to be in the future that's favorable for me. That's intelligence, right, at work. So even at the cellular level, there is something called intelligence. It's just very much compressed. It's a process that seems so automated that you and I don't think of it as being intelligent. We think that our brains think intelligently, but if you put your hand close to a fire, what happens? You pull it away, hey? Do you think about it? Reflex. Why? Because it burns. Because it's warm. So the heat activates the reflex. You pull it back without thinking at all. You solve the problem of dying, meaning that you're going to burn and you'll have sepsis and you'll die. Antiseptics are not that old in our history, eh? You'll just die. So you have to pull it away. It saved your life. You learn, ouch. Slow trickle up to the brain says, ouch. That's the pain. That actually taught you to next time not do it again. So you actually saved your life. You solved the problem of being too close to the fire without thinking, compressed. Is that intelligent? It's extremely intelligent. But it's just compressed. It's unconscious, and it happens all the time. So even at the level of the cell, there is an intelligent process that continuously predicts what's going to happen in the external environment, what it's going to do to this life, and then how do I solve that problem? Is everybody happy with that idea? That is a blood vessel. Can you see? So blood vessels form, thousands and thousands of blood vessels continuously form when they build new into an organ. When an organ, for example, has to actually recover. So you cut off a piece of the liver basically just regenerates. It happens, right? You know that liver does that. Cut the liver, regenerates. New blood vessels form. How do they know where to go? Is it just random? So science has repetitively now shown that those blood vessels, those cells, in a connected way, make an informed decision as to where it's going to go. It's not random. It's actually dependent on what's happening in front of it. Isn't that intelligent? That's intelligent, because it makes use of information of the external environment and then it makes the right kind of decision. So intelligence doesn't actually reside in your brain only. It goes right from cell to the prefrontal cortex. It just goes more and more sophisticated, you see. It becomes more fluid. It sort of opens up, and now we see intelligence, IQ, and all kinds of words we gave for it. But it's a process that continuously happens right from the bottom, from the cell to you and me. And you and I are basically a layered, complex layered system of what we see down there, you see, because there is the cell membrane, but here we have the skin. Ne? So the skin is once again, you've got a skin that basically ensures that you've got an internal environment, and you do the same thing, and it just repeats itself. It's just more complex and more complex. You can continue. The skin of the individual now becomes more and more. In the same way that cells actually become more and more cells, you've got an organ. You and I become more and more and more. We have a family. We have a team. The analogy is striking, by the way. I'll show it to you a bit later. That what drives a family also drives a team, a small group of individuals together. That becomes the family becomes a tribe, becomes society. A team becomes an organization. Can you see the organ in capital letters? It's a living, breathing thing. It's an organ. So the living system continues to stack up. We didn't actually devise the idea of a family. We didn't devise the idea of a team. We didn't devise the idea of an organization, a tribe, etc. It's a human, natural way humans roll. We stack up in living systems. And all of those have their own little skin. We can't see it. But hey man, there's the skin. This is you see, we've got walls. So here we sit. We're a group, we're a living system in a way. Right? And we buffer ourselves against what is in the outside. Boy, didn't we have an extreme outside this morning? I mean, I come from Cape Town. I haven't seen ice on my car for a long time. No? It's kan jy sien wat ons doen is ons buffer onsself en ons maak ons buffer eintlik dit wat van die eksterne omgewing afkom. Al die demands buffer ons deur in 'n plek te wees van hitte. And this is the same way that you should think about what you and I do here. We've got a buffer. How do we buffer ourselves against, as individuals, against the external elements? Quite simple. Klere. It's a buffer. We buffer ourselves. And in the same way, we buffer ourselves not only physically, but also emotionally and otherwise. It's a very, kan julle sien dat daar, ek wil julle moet net sien, daar's a living system that's actually going from cells to society. We're building a living system that recurs. And we're not doing it because we think about it. It's unconscious. This is how you actually live against the elements. And when there are new elements, we compare it to everything we know. And of course, we can't do it alone. We stack up. So why do we stack? Why do we stack from cells? Why do cells stack? There's only one reason that we can think of when you think biologically. It is to reduce the amount of energy and increase the yield. You guys talked about that very much in your system, right? Low energy, high yield. It's all about that. So when the demand becomes bigger, en dit gaan altyd so wees, nee? Die externe demand raak dit groter en groter. When it becomes bigger, we do something profoundly beautiful. We connect. So we connect, we stack up, and then we connect very closely, first of all. Closely, so that we can share intimate information. So we can share the information, and that enhances, and we use our collective capability. That's what cells do. That's what you and I do in families and teams. That's what we do, and we have something that actually drives that process, that glue us together. It's called trust. You talked about this morning. I'm just saying all of us alive, biologically. So trust, entrustment is, I entrust myself to you. Ek gee alles van my en jy gee alles van jou. That's what entrustment is, eh? 100% of you, 100% of me. That's entrustment. And then we connect and we can share intimate information, and now we have a capability of dealing with much more capability against the same demand, the external demand. You can see how you actually overcome the demand and continuously have yield. have healed. So this is how we stack up. It's a biological way of ensuring that you and I do not die, but we continue to not only survive, but thrive and perform well. So efficiency requires a lot of thinking from a biological perspective. Now that you are probably totally confused, happiness, I'm going to unpack that. Okay. Let's start with the brain. And I'll get back to these components. I'll actually going to repeat them in different ways. All right, let's now start with the brain. Relax. So the brain consists of many brain cells. Many. We have electrically active cells called the neurons. So if somebody says, talk about a brain cell, they usually talk about a neuron. Okay, the brain. The neuron is, there's about 86 billion of them in an adult brain. And in a newborn, how many neurons, electrically active brain cells? 86 billion. Yes. So we are born with all our electrically active brain cells, the neurons. But a newborn's brain is about 400 grams. We've got about 1.5 kilogram brain. Why is it, if they have all their neurons, why would it be 400 grams? The reason is that you and I have many, many connections. We make connections. This is a neuron, by the way. That's an electrically active brain cell. We make a lot of connections, and we also grow something that's called myelin. This is an insulating material. It's net soos wat jy 'n koperdraad vat en you insulate it. You enhance its conductivity. That's myelin. So this little cell that looks like a monster ink is called an oligodendrocyte. It's irrelevant. But that forms the myelin and sheaths around this electrically active brain cell. There are about 1 trillion of these types of cells. There are many other types as well. They are called the supporting cells, the glial cells. They support all these beautiful neurons. And the neurons make all the connections. Are you with me? So 86 billion neurons. In a newborn, you've got 86 billion of this, but you have almost nothing of that. And you've got very little connections. Now, every single one of those neurons are going to make 10 times as many connections. And it's going to open up in the right places where it needs to do it. It's first of all going to open up in the visual part of the brain and in the hearing part of the brain. So it can hear and see the feeder, the mother. Yeah? That's what you need now. So then it opens up and it starts to recognize the mother and recognize, and then it opens up a next thing. Just dependent on what is needed now, until that young one becomes a teenager, and then they're quite messed. But we're not going to get to that now. All right, but it's a very well structured process. So jy begin met al jou neurone, jy groei baie meer koneksies, 10 times, and then it prunes down 9 out of 10. And then you just have the best ones left. And then you're going to form the myelin, you see. And then the myelin starts to form. That myelin, by the way, we form connections, if you can calculate it in maths, we can actually form around 1 million of those connections per second when we are very young. 1 million per second. That's insane. Yeah? Insane. So many things happening that we just don't even know about. It's just fearfully and wonderfully made. Alex, I just wanted to add that. It's incredible what we do. We continue to form so this brain continues to form its capabilities to ensure that you and I stay alive, survive and thrive in life as and when it needs it. Okay. And now we end up, and let's go back to the adults. I just gave you a little bit of early childhood development, brain development journey. Now we're with an adult. An adult has 86 billion of those, trillion of these connecting cells, and they form connections. They look like that, you see? Connect, 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 connect. How many connections? Every one of these brain cells can make around 1,000 to 40,000 connections with other brain cells. Okay, this is completely underrepresented. We wouldn't even be able to see it. It's insane. An average of 10,000 connections. Each of your 86 billion electrically active brain cells. How many times a second can it fire? 100 times. So the amount of calculations that your brain can make per second is 86 billion times 10,000 times 100. One of our ex-presidents taught me never to try to pronounce big numbers. You should never do that. I promise you, you're not going to get it right. So it's a lot, it's a lot. All right, and you and I make, how much of this is conscious? How much of this is conscious? It's insane, you know. I started with the students who said, how much of our brain's conscious? I was taught medical students at some point, we were still at Tygerberg, and 80-20. We always go for the 80-20. That's a good rule, but that's business. That's deal. That's other things. 95, 95, 5, 99, 1, 1 in 10,000 is conscious. That's the current thinking neuroscientists have. So if you think you're going to know yourself, forget about it. Rather just start to get to know somebody else and trust yourself. That's life, right? It's way better. It's way better. We know these things without even thinking about it. Your brain is an incredibly unconscious system, okay? And it drives things unconsciously. I'm going to quickly show you another thing. Just do this exercise with me. Put your hands out there. And I'm going to give you 10 seconds. I'm going to give you 10 seconds. You must count the 10 seconds in your head, and then you're going to decide which hand you're going to close, okay? So you're not allowed to think now. Don't decide. You just count 10 seconds, and then you decide, okay, I'm going to close one hand, and then you close it, and just keep it there. So, no, okay, if you've done it already, just keep it there, and the other ones take 10 seconds, and then you close, okay? Okay, just keep it there for a sec. Everyone's got one hand closed. Remember, your brain crosses over. So if you close your left hand, the right side of the brain, motor cortex, part of the brain, activate it. You could see it. Activate and close the hand. Or the left side if it was the right side. Happy with that? Stop. How many seconds before you consciously decided to close, say, your left hand, did the right side of your brain, if I put an EEG on there, or put you in an MRI machine, functional MRI machine, how many seconds before you decided, consciously know you decided, could I predict exactly, with 100% certainty, which side you're going to close? It's got to be like the same time, eh? Né? So this is Lebet's experiment. He started out doing this and he showed 6 seconds. That's why I said 10 seconds. It's sort of down to 2 seconds now. There's a lot of studies being done, but it's still at a few seconds before you consciously decide which hand you're going to close. Your brain already decided that. Now, you and I did a crude test because you think, well, I already decided so. These are very well done experiments, and it's verified in many laboratories. You and I, before we decide something, voluntary, the brain already does it. Ne? So who's in control? Well, it's of course you and me, but it's just not the conscious me only. I'm also an unconscious me. So the unconscious, conscious you is a critical idea when you think about everything we do. We wouldn't have been here if it wasn't for that. So this is just a few things about the brain. When you think about the brain, I'm going to go into the idea now of showing you how this beautiful brain works. There you see a brain. Well, I've actually brought the brain here so I can show it to you. Oh, it's nice, no? Here we get a nice 3D model. This is the human brain. Just a few things about it. This is the right side. I'm going to pretend you know nothing about the brain. Is that okay? I was rudely reminded that I forgot that a cow has got 3 stomachs. Let's say you know nothing about the brain, and I'm going to just take it from there for you. This is the front of the brain. This is the right side. That's the back. So this is the part that you see with, hey? That's the back of the brain. When you hit your head against the wall, you see stars, right? Why? Because you really see stars. Because the brain that sees it has been activated, right? And that's why you see it. So we see with the back of our brains. So that's no, that's yes, that's yes, 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 yes. Okay, cool, got it. This brain has got all different kind of colors, and there's a reason for that. But first of all, I want you just to see that the brain looks like a bag of worms. Why? Why does it look like that? It's got all these bag of worms. It's because you need surface. You need surface in the brain. And the brain can only make more surface if it does a fancy thing. It goes crinkle cut. No? It does that. Because your brain is enclosed in the skull and it cannot go bigger than that. So now it's got to do that. If you take this surface of the brain called the cortex, you open it up, you have a brain about the surface, about the size of a baby blanket. I can even show you that our emotional part of our brains does that. It's got it looks like a string of beads. It does that. If we didn't have a skull, we'd probably have a baby blanket and 2 horns, strings of beads. So it's probably good to have a skull. Right, and so it's all about making use, solving the problem by doing that. In fact, when you are 7 months when you are a 7-month-old fetus, you start to have little bits of indents. At 9 months, you've got a proper worm-like brain. It's amazing how quickly and fast it develops in those two months or so. All right. What I also want you to see is this brain has got different colors because it denotes different functions. The brain is about the color. Sorry, this is lagging behind a bit. Let me just go back again. Normal view. I'm going to put on my glasses so I can at least see this. So these colors, we gave it the colors because the brain is specialized in terms of its different functions. I told you that you see with the back of your brain. This part, the yellow part, is actually the part that you hear with. This is your hearing, the auditory part. And then you've got here, do you see this interesting one here? This purple, the light purple. This is the motor cortex. That is the part that activated when you close your hand. All right, it's somewhere in there. And the back, that pinkish part, that is the sensory part. So motor and sensory is just sort of those little slivers. They're very important here in the front. To the back of that deep pink, that is in between the sensory part, that's your touch, sensory, touch, hearing, seeing, you've got something that's called the integration lobe. It's the part of the brain, the so-called parietal lobe, that integrates all your senses. And that actually makes sense of the world. Because you're looking at me, and everything makes sense, right? Here's a guy standing around, he's talking about the brain. I know exactly what's going on in here, I see the room. But where is the room? Where am I? Where are you? I'm in your brain. It's your brain that's activating it. It's your brain that's actually seeing everything. You're not seeing what is here. You're seeing what is here. No? That's important, right? That's why I say when you hit your head against the wall, you see stars. It's not because the stars are out there. The stars are in here. How do we know it's accurate? Well, we have Sunday roasts, and we have coffee shops, and all kinds of places where we tell each other continuously, no, it's not like this, man, it's like that. Ne? Especially Sunday roast. Don't you feel that's a very important place? Where you have so many debates between families and individuals, and they continue. What do? You are actually calibrating your system continuously. We calibrate so that we have benchmarks that are similar. If you are haywire incorrect, you see something out there that no one of us are seeing. For example, you are withdrawing from a lot of alcohol, and you see what we call clinkies, ne? Clinkies. You see the little flying things. I mean, I have so many of these patients. They see them. They really see them, but nobody else sees them. What do you do with them? You call that an hallucination, a visual hallucination. You send them to the psychiatrists so they can help you to unsee what is not there. Well, what we don't see. All right. That is how profound this is, what you actually, so you are actually making an internal representation of what is out there. That's what you mark. And then what you do is the internal representation. Can you see the back of the brain is all about that sensory integration. And it's compared to a map. It's compared to a map. Otherwise, how would you recognize it? So your brain, all the memory bits has got a map that says, yeah, here Alex is a mens. Of, hey man, this is weird. That's a funny looking guy, FLG. Often that in medicine, FLG. That's a funny looking guy. Why? How do you know it's funny? Because you compare it to your map. And every single thing in the world, emotionally, your emotional system, your understanding of everything, is compared to some kind of a map that you and I inherited genetically, and then we build it up over time. And this is also where the sore toes come from, if I'm quite sensitive to something. If I was hitting my head every time I eat a marshmallow, I would feel quite anxious when I see a marshmallow, right? Fight or flight response. This is just an example. So the sore toes. It's your map that's a bit distorted because too much value was assigned to it. And the way the map works is, and this is very important because it determines something that you guys talked about as well this morning, is it assigns value based on two things. One is 6 times more important. These guys in Columbia University studied this and said it's 6 times. I don't believe that, but let me just say for the moment, that's what we have, right? 6 times more readily, we are activated by something that is threatening us versus something that rewards us. Now, it's quite simple to understand. I think everything is fear-driven, but we'll get to that in a sec. Let's not go there. If there's a bus, you will every time step out of the way when there's a bus coming, né? Because one mistake can kill you. But if you miss a bus, the reward of getting on the bus, it's uncomfortable if you miss it. But there's another one. So you just wait for another one. And this is why we are so fear-driven. We are continuously driven by the threats outside of us. And rewards is the other one that ensures that we build the map. One mistake can kill you. That's why it's so important to be very much fear-driven. And we are unconsciously driven that way. Okay, that's important. That's risk management, same thing. So the map determines what matters most. If you think about purpose, and you think about alignment with purpose, and you think about values, it's all based on a map. So your values is part of your map. Value is what matters more than something else, matters more than something else. If you are, and I think many here, hopefully everyone are believers, and you've got a faith in God, and there's a faith, then God matters most, and all our values are aligned with that kind of thing, right? And fairness is important, etc., etc. All of those components form the map that you compare everything with. It's in your brain. So the brain is make internal representations of everything that's out there. And the front part takes everything that you know and then predicts the future, this part. This is the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex, that is the prefrontal cortex. That prefrontal cortex actually ensures that you take everything you know of something, or everything you know, knowledge, take the knowledge, and continuously solve a potential problem by comparing every potential solution. There is a highway in the brain that does that, and I'll show you the highway, and then I'm going to move out of that. So let me just show you the highway. Do you see there, those are all dotted lines? Those blocks there, that block is sensory information. That block is everything that you and I think about, that sound. And that block there is what we see. So see, hear, and feel are all connected, integrated. And then along this pathway, it goes right to the front. And those pathways continuously take the knowledge and build potential realistic scenarios of the possible. That's problem solving. Continuously, unconsciously, continuously say, what is possible here? What can I do with this? How can I make this work? There's a problem, that thing starts to work. When does it do its most complex work? That brain. Most complex work. 100% under pressure, but not too much, right? Because then it's chronic stress. But if you have the right amount of pressure, and then there's a time in the day that it does it too. Sleep at night. Your most complex problems are solved at night while you are asleep. Why? It requires a heck of a lot of energy. And you need to sleep. You need to go offline. Not dead, just offline from where you are now. Have you all had anesthetics? Yes? You have anesthetics? Oh, that's dead, huh? That's dead. You're gone and you wake up in no time. Where's the time? When you sleep, you know you slept, right? There's something else. So sleep is an incredibly important part of problem solving, being alive, and of learning. This whole brain, learning, having all the constructive knowledge and the problem solving machine requires sleep. It requires a very specific part of sleep called REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. Yeah. You know rapid eye movement sleep? The eyes go, yeah. And basically everything else is paralyzed. Did you know that? When you're in REM sleep, you're basically paralyzed. Why? Because you're not allowed to act out your dreams, you see? So you're just paralyzed. And in that REM sleep, you are really solving the complex problems and dealing with it. And you're building the map, the knowledge, building that map so that it gives you the right kind of guide and direction in life. Now, most of REM sleep happens in the latter part of the night, not in the first part of the night. Yes, there is REM sleep, but after 3 or 4 hours, you go into a lighter phase of sleep. And that's where most of the REM takes place. If you are chronically stressed, you wake up after 4 or 5 hours, right? Because you go into lighter sleep and then you wake up. And you lose all the value of that REM sleep in the lighter part of the night. Doesn't mean that you're not solving problems, but you're losing a lot. And of course, so you can see how chronic stress actually spirals down even more. Can you see? So if you are relaxed, in a relaxed state, you thrive, you sleep longer, you solve that problems. And you're much more a better complex problem solver. That's just an interesting way of just looking at this part of the brain. What I want to show you as well, we've got about 10 minutes, so I want to ensure that we use the 10 minutes properly. What I want to show you as well is this part of the brain. This part of the brain is the most basic part of the brain. It's the stem of the brain. Can you see that's the brain stem? That piece is actually your spinal cord. So the spinal cord goes down. You've got a brain stem that's the first. This is actually the most basic part of the brain, but it's extremely complicated. All right? But it's basic in the sense that you cannot be alive without the brain stem. The brain stem ensures that you're alive by doing the following. Lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub. Nah. Okay, got it. It also does other things. It also regulates hunger, thirst, sleep, wake. Can you see? It shares a pattern. Rhythms and cycles. Lub-dub, sleep, wake, hunger, thirst. The brain stem keeps you alive by regulating everything through a rhythmical process. Why? Because the whole world, external environment and the internal environment, is rhythmical. Rhythms and cycles. You guys, I don't have to tell you anything about that. In biology, in the farm, you understand that very well. So, but we stay alive through that too. And so your brainstem keeps you alive through rhythms and cycles, regulation. If you want to look after your system and be efficient and perform at your best, you have to pay attention to your rhythms. Now, fortunately, you and I breathe without actually thinking about it. Okay, and the same with the heart and so on. But to optimize that process, you need to look after sleep-wake. Yes, you have to sleep to be alive. You cannot be alive if you don't sleep, eh? It's not possible. Poor sleep, of course, leads to all kinds of challenges, inflammation and so on. But good sleep ensures that you are really proficient. So sleep-wake cycle, your hunger-thirst cycle, what you eat, and how you look after that rhythm and process. How you ensure that your heart rate, loop, and breathing is well looked after, that's movement, exercise. That's critical. Okay, so you actually utilize the rhythms at the basis of the system to ensure that you are a high performer at your best. What it also does is phenomenally good. I'm going to show you this picture again. It also does the following. Those rhythms, good sleep, good breathing and heart rate, exercise and movement, and nutrition, proper nutrition, ensures that you have more of these little pieces of cereal secreted by these brain cells. Okay? Those cereals are known as growth factors. And they are secreted when you do those good things, looking after your rhythms. They're secreted in this part of the brain. Wrong there. This, when we were at the, let's go back there. This part of the brain. So you grow your capabilities for problem solving, and this part of the brain, the learning part. So the learning part and the problem solving part are actually growing. And what it does as well is a very, very important thing. It also silences another part of the brain. It reduces its effect, the eyes of the monster. These are called the amygdalas. They are the seat of emotion. If you become chronically stressed, your amygdala start to grow. So those same growth factors, actually, when you have stress, overgrows. When you do the right things, it attenuates it. So you want less of that and more of that. The good news is that those rhythms ensure that you actually have more of that and less of this. By the way, if the amygdala start to overgrow when there's stress, you also, and it's been well shown in science, you also start to develop coronary heart problems. The coronary arteries start to clog up, and you develop your illnesses. Isn't that quite fascinating? It's all linked. All right, so very important that you look after your rhythms and your cycles. Rhythms and cycles, because you want a lot of that in the right places and less of that in the wrong ones. That's the rhythms. And this is the brain stem. So your brain stem is all about rhythms, and then on top of that, you want the brain to make the best, the best solutions for you. We talked about connect. Let me say a few things about connect, because we can't do this alone. So how do you do all of that with a rhythm that works well, a system that is properly structured? How do you ensure that you have two other things? And I'm going to share those two things with you, and I'm going to show you the picture, and we're done. There are two other things you need. One is we need to connect. We talked about that. So we connect naturally. There are two forms of connection in the brain, and they are actually in different parts of the brain. The first one is we connect by entrusting ourselves to each other through bonding. And bonding happens here. Can you see the brainstem? Now check this out. Boom, there's the hypothalamus. It's just on top of the brainstem. Can you see? That purple thing. And this is the pituitary gland, the yellow piece. So this pituitary gland and that purple part called the hypothalamus is actually still part of the brainstem, but it's on top of the brainstem. And it's also the first part of the limbic system, the emotional system. It's the part where oxytocin is secreted. So oxytocin is secreted here, which is the hormone of trust. It's the one that is secreted when a baby is born. Baby is out, touches mother, activates oxytocin. Oxytocin actually shrinks those blood vessels in the placenta. The placenta comes out, the second birth. Those blood vessels, the uterus shrinks. And the uterus shrinks because of the oxytocin and saves the mother's life. Otherwise, she'd bleed to death. You can see that, right? Men also have this kind of hormone that's secreted. It's a bit more vasopressin, but it's also actually in there. It's also in that area. For example, Romans in the old days, back to back, sword, fought, 180 degrees, 180 degrees. If your buddy was dead, you were dead. Yes. So your buddy here saved your life, and you saved your buddy's life. You entrusted your whole life to that one behind you, and vice versa. in the same way that a mother and a child entrust themselves to each other. So bonding is between two people and then between small groups of people that can connect, a bit like they put cells together. You can't put more cells together and then you've got space, right? In the same way, we actually entrust ourselves to each other in small teams. Rusty Rasmus got that right with his huddles, right? So huddles and bomb squads and everything, right? That's a small group of people who actually connect and entrust themselves to each other. There's no place for anybody else there. This is bonding. You need this because that's how we roll as humans, remember that. So without bonding, we've got a deep problem. That balls, the big balls in the vase, fantastic video. Those are, bonding is in there. And then the next one is we start to form what we call culture. We belong. Belonging is beyond that as we get aggregates and aggregates. You need both bonding and belonging everywhere. And you should not confuse them with each other. And ensure that that's well stacked. Now you have a living system, and that's connection. Through that, you can actually have the collective creativity of the whole system. By the way, the other thing you need when you have all of that is what do you need? Fairness. Fair contributions. Psychological safety. I can make a fair contribution and I can make it open and freely. You're not going to eat my head off or chop me in the block or whatever. How do you work with your teams, especially your employees? When I'm also boss of my team, got to be very careful to allow them to really make their contribution so we have collective creativity. And that's where the whole magic starts. Okay, so that's the connection. The final thing is what? It's energy. It's ATP, that adenoid triphosphate that Alex showed. Energy. How do we create energy? We're just like any combustion machine, eh? I mean, you guys understand biology. So you put wood on a fire, what do you get? You put the wood is an organic compound structure, you burn it up with oxygen, and then you get carbon dioxide and water. Nee, julle ken hulle, as jy brand, that's a chemical process of any combustion. Carbon dioxide and water. And you have byproducts of heat or pressure or whatever that is, some form of energy. Well, we do the same thing. We have two pipes. We have one pipe where we put all the fuel in. Lekker pisvangs and so on, lekker kos. So we eat food. We eat the food. That goes into the one pipe. And then it goes into the stomach and it gets broken up in small little bits and pieces. And then it goes into the bloodstream and then it waits and then it goes into the cells. Carried in by all kinds of transporters and so forth. And then it waits. For what? For oxygen. Oxygen goes in through the other pipe. The air pipe. And then it goes in and it gets carried through the hemoglobin and then it gets into the cell and there it burns it up. Burns up all those fuel bits called glucose and proteins and all kinds and fats and so forth, lipids. And you have the result of energy. And energy is stored in something called ATP. That's adenosine triphosphate. And it's stored there. And of course, you have to have something else, heat, 36.8 degrees, nice. Okay, so that's one of the byproducts of the whole process. And carbon dioxide through the air, through the pipe. We breathe it out, same pipe, air pipe. And what happens to the water? Well, we all know, we sweat it out and we leave a bit in here, and then the rest of it goes through the reservoir, the bladder, and there it goes. It's phenomenal. It's a whole energy system there. So the same thing, whether you burn a car or fuel or yourself, it's combustion. That ATP now is finite. You cannot make more ATP. If you have too much energy, you store it in fat. So now you've got ATP that's available. You can, however, block the amount of energy that you use to do what you need to do, or you can boost it. This is critical. The good news is there are energy boosters, and this is how these things, once again, that you guys mentioned this morning, comes into play. There are 5 major components that boosts the amount of ATP that you can use, and that enhances what we call goal-directed behavior. You remember we talked about efficiency and high performance. You want those boosters. I'm going to show you a final slide where it's on, so you don't have to write it down and so on. And I'm happy to actually distribute it to you guys if you want to do that. So the first one of the boosters is optimism. What is optimism? It's not Pollyanna, hey, alles is nicely. It's this too shall pass. We will still be here and it will be gone. That's optimism, right? So optimism has been well demonstrated to enhance the amount of ATP that we use. It's actually through something called dopamine in our brains. It's the reward transmitter. Second one is enthusiasm. Talked about that this morning. Passion, enthusiasm. Enthusiasm, been well shown. The other one is curiosity, interest, to be interested. Remain curious, and your brain will continuously give you more and more dopamine and more performance. Okay? And that's not only for your work as a farmer, also in your relationships and so forth. Humor. Interesting. Humor. We've got a lot of that in South Africa. Yeah, we know how to do that. And it enhances our goal-directed behavior. It's been well demonstrated. Right. And then the final one, which I probably should have started with just after optimism, is gratitude. Gratitude meaning I'm grateful for what I have. If you can practice that, what are the 3 things I'm grateful for that happened yesterday, and the 3 things I'm grateful for today, and you do that every day, you will have a phenomenal amount of dopamine available that enhances your unconscious, remember unconscious, goal-directed behavior. That's the boosters. What are the leakers? The ones that actually inhibit it. It reduces your energy. Negative intrusive thought patterns. Have you heard what so-and-so said? Again, have you heard that and that? Those are physical leakers. They reduce the dopamine in your brain, and your performance goes down after you had all that conversations. It's been well shown. And the other one, of course, that's even worse is addictions and destructive habits. You've got to stamp that out so that your dopamine is high, so that you can have a lot of energy. So we have connectors, we've got energy, we talked about the rhythms, and we talked about purpose and the way we actually value things, the way that we say what matters most and what matters less. And that's the innovative system. So the final one I want to show you is literally, let me just go there. This is a way to look at high performance efficiency. Here we have the rhythms. We talked about sleep, nutrition, exercise, movement. I'm going to say something about mindfulness. That's going to be the end. This turbocharges the system. Growth, the growth factors. Then you have at the top the purpose and what matters most. Those are what we call the transformers. Those things that transform your system, that mindset, what matters most, critical, and purpose. It's been shown that people with purpose in life, that know that there's meaning to their lives, reduces their risk for a number of chronic conditions like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and so forth, even more than many of the tablets that are being used to try to prevent that today. It's been well shown. You can have a look at that, the neuroscience of PIL, purpose in life. There we have connect, and there we have energize. So there you have the gratitude, the optimism, curiosity, enthusiasm, humor, reduce negative thoughts. And then innovation requires knowledge and problem solving. We talked about that as well. And effectively that drives, and purpose drives the direction. Mindfulness. How does mindfulness work? Deep breathing. This is our last exercise. Put your hand on your chest and on your tummy. And just breathe. And tell me which hand moves most. I bet many of you can feel the top hand moving, right? So, staan regop en haal asem. Dan gaan ons. You can relax. What needs to happen is this hand should not move a lot, if at all. It's the tummy that needs to go out. Nah. Why? Because you have a diaphragm that has to go down. Your lungs look like that. The base of the lungs need to be filled. That's deep breathing, and that's down here. It's not here. This is the apex of the lungs. No, he's longer. That's longer. So the diaphragm goes down. When the diaphragm goes down, your tummy has to go out. If your stomach doesn't go out, there's a real problem. You need to see a proctologist. That's just medicine. All right. So everything is contained, and you go like little babies. You see a baby breathing, it's like so weird. They breathe in, and the tummy goes. Whoop. That's normal. That's physiological breathing. You want to breathe this way. If you actually don't breathe like this, you must just practice it. Every morning you get up and just before you go to the bathroom, you try to breathe deeply and try to feel how your full bladder gets very excited when you go. Just feel it. And over time, you will start to breathe deeply. Deep breathing is the essence of mindfulness. Deep breathing reduces the pressure here. Okay, it reduces the pressure in the lungs. You can see because it goes down, it opens up. The pressure goes down and it compresses all the whole abdominal compartment. Can you see that? And all the blood that's around your liver and your system gets pushed up into the heart. It goes, and then you have a lot of blood available, and then it gets sent to the brain and everything else. And what happens? The blood pressure goes down. The heart rate goes down. You go into what's called a baseline relaxed physiological state, parasympathetic drive. That's essential for this process, and it's essential for the development of everything you need here. So deep breathing is at the essence of it all. It's no wonder that, for me, I'm just so profoundly, it's just at all when I think that God's name is Yahweh. It's breath of life. We're connected. That's where everything starts. Okay, so breath of life. And then, when you do if you do Bible study, for example, when you do practicing your stilte tyd, wat doen jy? Jy lees Bybel en bid. Is ek reg? Dis natuurlik nie stilte tyd nie, dis Bybel lees en bid. Stilte tyd is silence your mind. Deep breathing. Just sit in complete silence. So if you could do that, just sit in complete silence for 15 minutes a day. I mean, you guys wake up before the crack of dawn, man. All right, so sit. I do too, by the way. I think that's still a farmer. So it's silent, you sit, and you do deep breathing, and just try for, even if it's 5 minutes, but go to about 20, and go silence your mind properly. So you try to think of nothing at all. You can. It just takes time. You can't run a marathon now if you want, even if you don't do it every day. In the same way, you're going to become fit doing that. If you do that, you will, on the day, experience the value of this whole system that's starting to pull itself right. All right, so this is why mindfulness is so important. Staying in the present. Mindful. Mindful is being in the present. And you'll start to get that right, that you are in the present. So that's my final analysis there. We'll let you have this. All of the best with everything. You guys are keeping us alive and well, so we're really very, very, very grateful for that. Dankie vir die melk.